Stand on York's northern English walls today, and you occupy the exact posts where Roman guards watched 2,000 years ago. Stroll down the shambles to walk pathways originally forged by Vikings. Feel the ancient stones of the Minster. You are connecting with a masterpiece that demanded 250 years to build. This city simply refuses to fade away. Roman emperors breathed their last inside these very defences. Monarchs once commanded all of England from this ground. Invading forces have repeatedly laid siege to it. Devastating plagues have swept through its streets. Enemy bombs have rained down upon it. Yet through every trial, York has survived. You are about to witness a historical documentary unlike any other. Powered by cutting-edge AI, we have turned ancient engravings and dim photos into vibrant, moving realities. Instead of merely hearing about York's past, you will experience it firsthand. This is York's epic tale. Half an hour, 2 millennia, let us start at the very dawn. It is 71 AD. Rome's 9th Legion marches into hostile territory to hunt rebellious native tribes. They reach the strategic junction of the Ouse and Foss rivers. Here they stop, not to rest, but to settle. They build a fortress, starting with timber before upgrading to stone. They name this outpost Eboracum. York becomes the 9th Legion's permanent home. 5,000 Imperial veterans assemble here. They build bathhouses, barracks, temples, and civic centres. This is no temporary camp. This is the birth of a city. Then a mystery occurs that still baffles historians. During the early 120s, the entire 9th Legion simply vanishes. 5,000 troops, their standards and records completely disappear from history. Their ultimate fate remains totally unknown. The 6th Legion replaces them, occupying York for 3 centuries. Eboracum quickly evolves past a basic frontier fort. It becomes a site of massive strategic value. After his 211 AD Scottish campaigns, Emperor Septimius Severus visits York. He is old, exhausted, and dying. He perishes right here on the edge of his empire. Here in York, his son Caracalla makes a massive decision. This northern fort is declared Britannia's capital. Britannia Inferior is now governed straight from York. Next comes a truly world-changing event. When Emperor Constantius dies here in 306 AD, troops instantly crown his son Constantine. Constantine does not just rule, he reinvents the Roman Empire. Legalizing Christianity, he ends centuries of religious persecution. Moving the capital to Constantinople, he reshapes imperial power entirely. Western civilization pivots due to a leader who began his reign in this city. You can still see his bronze statue outside York Minster today. By 314, York has a bishop attending major church councils in Arles. Christianity shifts from tolerated to officially established. Born as a military camp, the city is now a centre of faith and imperial might. When Rome abandons Britain a century later, the greatest empire collapses. Yet York refuses to die with it. The Roman walls slowly crumble. Locals scavenge ancient stones for new buildings. Roman street grids vanish beneath mud and new settlements. Nevertheless, the people remain. Arriving Anglo-Saxons do not find an empty ghost town. They inherit a living settlement, drastically reshape it, and claim it as their own. For the next 2 centuries, Eboracum is reborn as Eoforwich. The city successfully navigates the chaotic post-Roman landscape. On Easter 627, the battle-hardened pagan king Edwin of Northumbria enters a modest wooden chapel here to be baptized. A single baptism seems trivial, but Edwin rules a kingdom. Whenever monarchs embrace a new faith, their nations inevitably follow suit. The new religion sweeps across Northumbria, firmly establishing York as its spiritual core. That tiny wooden chapel will eventually evolve into the magnificent Minster. However, this grand architectural evolution requires centuries to unfold. By 735, the local bishop is officially promoted to the rank of archbishop. This elevates York to the exact same religious status as Canterbury. England no longer relies on a single religious capital. Two supreme centres now exist, with York standing proudly as one. Soon after, the city fosters a brilliant intellect who will guide European philosophy for decades. The scholar Alcuin takes charge of the York School in 778. Through his leadership, it blossoms into Europe's premier educational institution. Devout scholars journey from all corners of the continent just to learn here. Seeking an educational pioneer for his massive empire, Charlemagne specifically recruits York's Alcuin. This era represents York's absolute intellectual zenith. As Europe navigates the post-Roman Dark Ages, York keeps the flame of literacy alive. Yet across the North Sea, fierce warriors are actively assembling fleets and forging blades. Tales of wealthy English abbeys and defenceless church gold have reached their ears. They are sailing over, and absolutely nothing can halt their advance. It is November 866. Viking longships silently glide up the River Ouse in the pre-dawn darkness. Hundreds of fierce Danish and Norwegian warriors prepare to attack. This is the infamous Great Heathen Army that just ravaged eastern England. They fully surround Eoforwic before the sun rises. Outnumbered Anglo-Saxon defenders are instantly crushed. By nightfall, the Norsemen hold total control. They will rule this city for nearly a century. Renaming it Jorvik, they actively rebuild it rather than simply occupying it. This goes far beyond a simple raid. It is full-scale colonization. Whole Norse families settle down. Skilled craftsmen open thriving workshops. Merchants forge vast trade networks linking York to Dublin, Scandinavia, and beyond. The 1970s Coppergate digs revealed Viking streets so well preserved that ancient leather, wood, and seeds survived a millennium intact. Jorvik quickly becomes a crown jewel of the Norse world. At its peak, the population swells to a massive 10,000 residents. Huge for that era, they even mint local coins bearing the names of obscure Viking kings. The narrow streets hum with busy metalworkers, jewelers, woodcarvers, and leather craftsmen. However, Viking rule remains highly unstable. Violent kings constantly seize and lose power. The final ruler has a name that perfectly captures Viking culture. His name is Eric Bloodaxe. He earned this terrifying title through sheer brutality until 954. Eric finally dies in battle, taking York's Viking kingdom down with him. For a brief moment, York becomes entirely English. Once again. The Anglo-Saxons reclaim control, but this peace lasts exactly 1 century until 1066 changes England forever. First, Norwegian forces invade to reclaim their ancestral lands. King Harold Godwinson marches north, intercepting them at nearby Stamford Bridge. He delivers a totally crushing defeat. The Viking Age officially ends here. Harold celebrates his victory right inside York. His triumph secures both the city and the north. Suddenly, frantic messengers arrive with desperate news. William of Normandy has just invaded the south. Harold must immediately march his exhausted army south. Sprinting 200 miles in 4 days, his forces fall at Hastings, where he famously dies from an arrow to the eye. Or so the popular legend goes.
Build me a castle!
William wins, and in 1068, the newly crowned conqueror rides into York to impose a brutal regime. Surveying a city that had survived Romans and Vikings, he issues one command. York Castle's foundations are quickly laid, housing a garrison to remind the locals who rules England. Yet York's defiant citizens have other plans. In 1069, they launch a massive rebellion. Allying with Danish invaders, they storm the new fortress and slaughter every Norman inside. For a brief, glorious moment, York is independent again. William's revenge is truly apocalyptic. He unleashes the harrying of the North, a ruthless campaign that permanently scars English history. From York to Durham, his troops burn every village, farm, and field. They slaughter livestock, destroy food stores, and salt the earth. Chroniclers struggle to find words dark enough to describe the horror. Countless thousands die from brutal starvation. Desperation even drives some survivors to cannibalism. The entire Yorkshire region becomes a desolate wasteland. Afterward, William aggressively rebuilds York Castle. This time, he guarantees there will be no rebellion. His brutal message is clear: defy me, and I will burn your world to ash. Nevertheless, life persists. The recovery is painfully slow and agonizing. Eventually, York bounces back. Trade slowly returns to the streets. The Minster begins its transition from simple timber. An Anglo-Saxon wooden church evolves into a massive Norman stone cathedral. York also unexpectedly gains its own saint. After a long exile, Archbishop William returns to York in 1153. The entire city crowds the streets to welcome him home. So many people pack onto Ouse Bridge that it snaps, plunging hundreds into the river. Then a true miracle happens. Incredibly, not a single person drowns. William's tomb inside the Minster becomes a major pilgrimage site for all of England. However, 1190 brings a tragedy that permanently stains York's legacy. As England prepares for the Third Crusade, fierce anti-Jewish violence sweeps the nation. A frenzied mob targets York's local Jewish community. Fearing for their lives, Jewish citizens seek refuge inside Clifford's Tower. This structure is the wooden keep of York Castle. The mob surrounds them for days, demanding their conversion or death. Facing certain slaughter on March 16th, many choose suicide rather than surrendering to the mob. Anyone stepping outside to beg for mercy is instantly murdered. Roughly 150 innocent people die during that horrific night. The exact death toll remains unknown to history, yet the dark shame of this event lingers forever. York is now wealthy, powerful, and closely tied to the crown. Still, it clearly harbours a capacity for immense cruelty. Moving forward, the 13th century will bring entirely new challenges. In 1212, King John, arguably England's worst monarch, grants York a remarkable gift. He officially hands the city the power of self-governance. York is suddenly authorised to control its own laws, taxes, and justice system. It essentially functions as an independent city-state within the kingdom. This royal favour is strictly business, not charity. This is a highly calculated transaction. The booming wool trade makes York incredibly rich. Exporting Europe's finest wool, York becomes a massive hub for textile processing. Naturally, immense wealth buys power, and York eagerly flexes it. By 1298, King Edward I, the Hammer of the Scots, moves the entire English government to York. He relocates absolutely everything, not just his royal court. He transfers the treasury, the law courts, and the entire national bureaucracy. For 6 full years, anyone doing state business must travel to York. Edward is fiercely obsessed with conquering Scotland. Needing his government near the front lines, he makes York his forward base. York transcends regional importance to become England's temporary capital. The Scots inevitably take notice by 1319. They launch a violent raid right up to the city walls. During this brutal fighting, they even kill York's mayor. The Scottish War is no longer a distant rumour. Battle has literally reached the city gates. Thankfully, Edward III creates much happier memories here in 1328. His royal wedding to Philippa of Hainault at the Minster draws Europe's elite nobility. York officially reaches the peak of its medieval glory. It stands wealthy from trade, favoured by kings, and intensely powerful. Suddenly, a much darker era descends. In 1349, the Black Death strikes York without warning. The lethal plague rips through crowded medieval streets, jumping rapidly between victims. Nobody understands how infectious diseases spread. There is absolutely no defense available. People drop dead in their beds, in the streets, and at their anvils. Overwhelmed death carts cannot handle the endless corpses. Up to half of York's population perishes in mere months. A complete economic collapse strikes instantly. Trade grinds to a total halt. Busy workshops sit completely abandoned. Surrounding fields become completely overgrown. The city does eventually recover. However, this painful process takes decades. Soon, the 15th century brings terrifying new conflicts. Political and religious battles create wounds deeper than the plague. Archbishop Richard Scrope stands at his altar and preaches open rebellion. He argues that taxes are unendurable. The king's rule is too corrupt and the people too oppressed. As England's most powerful cleric, his call for uprising carries massive weight. King Henry IV answers this threat with ruthless speed. He quickly arrests, tries, and beheads the rebellious archbishop. This bloody execution sparks massive outrage. English archbishops are supposed to be completely untouchable. They are meant to be entirely safe from execution. But Henry IV simply ignores ancient sacred traditions. Scrope is executed and his body is buried inside York Minster. Almost instantly, locals begin worshipping the fallen cleric as a holy martyr. The medieval era is rapidly fading away. The ruthless age of absolute monarchy officially dawns. By 1472, York is dragged into England's bloodiest family feud. After 250 grueling years, the magnificent York Minster is finally finished. Begun in 1220, this Gothic marvel is consecrated with soaring arches and massive stained glass. It stands proud as Northern Europe's largest Gothic cathedral. The iconic silhouette defining York's skyline is finally complete. Yet simultaneously, England is trapped in a devastating conflict. Let's quickly rewind to 1455. The nation plunges into a civil war between rival descendants of Edward III. Fighting for control, their bitter feud becomes the Wars of the Roses. The House of Lancaster fights under the Red Rose. Opposing them is the House of York, marching under the White Rose. York is deeply entrenched in this violence. It acts as the conflict's beating heart. The White Rose flies proudly above these walls. Yorkist armies deploy directly from these streets. Whenever a Yorkist rules, the city thrives. When a Lancastrian seizes power, York suffers, though 3 Yorkists eventually rule. Edward IV wins the crown through sheer battlefield dominance. His young son Edward V rules briefly before mysteriously vanishing. Lastly comes the infamous Richard III. He remains history's most debated English monarch. Yet to York, he is a dedicated protector and champion. Locals see him as a generous benefactor who genuinely values the North. Citizens cheer wildly whenever he rides through town. The city is deeply grateful for his new privileges. Richard is York's true king in a way no southern royal could be. Tragically, August 22nd, 1485, brings the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard III is cut down by Henry Tudor's army. The final Yorkist king dies in the mud, permanently ending his family's royal claim. As the Tudors claim victory, York sinks into mourning. The White Rose dynasty is utterly destroyed. The Red Rose reigns supreme. A new royal lineage seizes total control. Crucially, these new rulers hold no love for the North. They offer York no special favours whatsoever. The Tudor era introduces an entirely new kind of warfare. Religious violence soon eclipses all previous political bloodshed. By 1530, the ambitious Cardinal Thomas Wolsey becomes York's archbishop. Wolsey functions as far more than a simple church leader. He operates as England's second most powerful man. As Henry VIII's right hand, Wolsey governs while the king hunts and feasts. However, Wolsey makes a fatal mistake by failing to secure Henry's divorce. Desperate for Anne Boleyn, Henry strips Wolsey of everything when he fails. Wolsey ultimately dies in absolute disgrace. By 1530, he is left ruined and isolated. 6 years later, the north explodes in the Pilgrimage of Grace, with 40,000 marchers defending the old faith. They fiercely protest Henry's split from Rome and his suppression of Catholicism. They are fighting for the only spiritual reality they have ever known. Naturally, York sits at the blazing epicenter of this rebellion. Henry crushes the uprising with his signature brutality. Rebel leaders are executed while monastery destruction accelerates. By 1539, ancient sanctuaries like St. Mary's Abbey are completely looted and abandoned. York's religious soul is violently torn out, yet local Catholics refuse to vanish. They go underground, risking death to hide priests and worship secretly. In 1586, the devout Margaret Clitheroe pays the ultimate price for her faith. A local butcher's wife, she is caught hiding fugitive Catholic priests inside the shambles. Upon arrest, she bravely refuses to enter a formal plea. She knows that pleading could force her children into the torture chamber. Therefore, she maintains an absolute protective silence. The court sentences her to be slowly crushed to death. Executioners place a door over her, piling on heavy stones until she is fatally crushed. She dies in horrific agony simply to keep her family safe. Today she is a saint, and her former home remains a sacred shrine. The brutal Reformation effectively pits neighbours and families against one another. Sadly, this dark era does not end York's suffering. By 1644, England is tearing itself apart in another civil war. The king fiercely battles his own parliament. Royalists clash endlessly with parliamentarian roundheads. York sides with King Charles I, prompting a massive parliamentary siege. 20,000 troops surround York for 11 grueling weeks, trapping everyone inside. Essential food supplies quickly vanish. Mass starvation ravages the trapped civilian population. Deadly diseases run rampant through the barricaded streets. Royalists attempt a massive rescue at nearby Marston Moor, sparking one of England's largest battles. The rescue army is completely obliterated. 4,000 royal soldiers die in a single bloody afternoon. York has no choice but to surrender. The defeated king loses his head 5 years later. As absolute monarchy dies, York stands exhausted from centuries of warfare. The broken city desperately needs lasting peace. Miraculously, a peaceful era finally arrives. The 18th century brings calm, though York still knows how to entertain a massive crowd. On April 7th, 1739, the infamous Dick Turpin ascends the deadly gallows at Knavesmire. Turpin is merely a violent thief and murderer, yet execution transforms him into a folk legend. The famous tale of his overnight ride from London to York on Black Bess is pure fiction. It was entirely fabricated by romantic novelists long after his demise. Nevertheless, the captivating myth endures even today. The actual historical truth is far less romantic. Turpin was simply a court criminal whom York publicly hanged. Thousands of eager spectators gather to watch his neck snap. Hangings serve as highly popular public entertainment during the Georgian era. Observers note that Turpin faces the noose with remarkable courage. Bravery, however, does not make a villain truly noble. It simply makes him a brave criminal. 6 years later, York's executioners are busy once again. 22 Jacobite rebels are hanged following Bonnie Prince Charlie's failed Catholic uprising. This 1745 rebellion had come terrifyingly close to actually succeeding. It ultimately fails, and York's bloody executions sternly warn against future treason. Meanwhile, the city's overall character is rapidly shifting. The relentless bloodshed of earlier centuries is finally fading into the past. York evolves into a fashionable Georgian resort town, famous for horse racing and theatre. The ancient stronghold is actively forging a glamorous new identity. Yet before this peaceful transition finishes, the Minster faces a fiery internal threat. The date is February 1st, 1829. An unstable man named Jonathan Martin hides inside the minster after evening prayers. He lingers in the deep shadows as the clergy departs. He waits patiently until the heavy doors are securely locked. Total silence falls across the empty cathedral. He then emerges, absolutely convinced that God wants him to incinerate the building. He piles cushions and wooden benches under the choir stalls and ignites them. The hungry flames spread incredibly fast. By the time locals spot the blazing choir roof, the minster is already engulfed for the night. Ancient roof timbers and priceless medieval carvings are completely reduced to ash. Authorities quickly apprehend Martin, declare him legally insane, and lock him away. The minster is magnificently rebuilt, proving that even during peacetime, York's heritage remains vulnerable. York's precious historical treasures remain highly vulnerable. The year 1830 introduces an entirely novel concept. The elegant Yorkshire Museum opens right amidst the ruins of St. Mary's Abbey. For the first time ever, York consciously treats its own history as something worth preserving and studying. However, the arrival of 1839 changes absolutely everything. The Revolutionary Railway reaches York, bringing the ambitious George Hudson with it. Hudson was certainly not born into a life of wealth or privilege. This simple draper's son rapidly transforms into Britain's undisputed railway king. He crowns York as the central hub of his rail empire, triggering explosive urban growth. Massive railway workshops quickly hire thousands of local labourers. Grand new stations open their doors. Huge hotels and sprawling warehouses redefine the skyline. The city's population surges at an unprecedented rate. London is suddenly just a 5-hour ride instead of a 2-day trek. Industrial Manchester becomes easily accessible. An ancient, isolated city is suddenly plugged directly into the national grid. Middle-class tourists flood the streets, eagerly visiting the medieval walls and minster on weekend trips. York has played countless roles throughout the centuries. It was a Roman fortress, a Viking capital, and a royal stronghold. Now it transitions into a modern tourist haven where visitors consume history rather than forge it. This cultural shift is only just beginning. By 1938, the York Castle Museum opens with a stunningly recreated Victorian street named Kirkgate. The immersive exhibit becomes an overnight sensation. York no longer merely preserves its history, it actively brings it back to life. Tragically, York cannot escape the devastation of World War II. On April 29, 1942, air raid sirens blast across the sleeping city at 2:30 a.m. Groggy citizens stumble from their beds in total confusion. Why would the German military target York? The city holds zero crucial military or industrial targets. Frightened locals simply cannot understand the motive. This is not a strategic military raid. This is purely an act of cultural warfare. The Germans call these attacks the Baedeker raids. The campaign is named directly after a popular German tourist guidebook. Hitler ordered the Luftwaffe to obliterate Britain's historic jewels in revenge for RAF strikes on Germany. Packed with ancient architecture, York is the ultimate cultural target. Enemy bombers arrive in terrifying waves, dropping incendiaries designed to ignite old timber structures. The historic 15th century Guildhall quickly burns to the ground. Entire rows of priceless medieval houses go up in flames. The night sky glows a horrific fiery orange. The minster seems absolutely destined to burn. Multiple incendiary bombs smash directly onto its roof. Yet ordinary volunteer firefighters scale the roof mid-raid to extinguish the flames manually. Thanks to their bravery, the cathedral is saved before the morning sirens wail. Tragically, 92 residents die, hundreds lose their homes, and vast sections of medieval York lie in smouldering ruins. Yet the mighty minster still stands proud. York quickly rebuilds, expanding in ways totally unimaginable a century prior. The University of York's 1963 founding injects thousands of young students into this historically obsessed city. The city is finally looking toward its future. A year later, the National Railway Museum opens, celebrating York's Victorian era and becoming a major British attraction. In 1984, the revolutionary Jorvik Viking Centre opens, using 1979 archaeological finds to vividly recreate North York. Visitors can wander reconstructed streets, watch animatronic villages, and even smell the authentic odours of the 10th century. History is no longer trapped inside dusty textbooks. It is a visceral experience waiting for you here in York. Unfortunately, the city's tragedies are not quite finished. Later in 1984, another severe fire strikes the Minster. A lightning strike sets the entire south transept roof ablaze. Some superstitious locals immediately declare it a divine judgment. The church had recently consecrated a bishop with highly controversial views. Others simply attribute the fire to terrible luck. Regardless, the Minster burns, and York faithfully repairs it again. They restore it with the same dedication shown after Martin's arson 155 years earlier. Spanning 2,000 years and 70 generations, this city has witnessed humanity's best and worst. From Constantine's vision and Viking innovation to wartime violence and the bravery of a dying butcher's wife. If you live in York, this incredible saga is your direct heritage. This is exactly what your resilient city has suffered and achieved. If you are a visitor, you now understand why York is utterly vital to Western civilization. Through every conceivable disaster, York has survived and thrived. History is not merely a past event. It is the force shaping our present, and York has influenced more history than practically any other British city. If you loved this journey, please like the video and subscribe for more full histories. Please do not forget to drop a comment below. Tell us which city you want covered next, and it might be our next feature. Thanks for watching, and as always, we will see you in the past.